We are jumping right in today with really fascinating paper, Large Causal Models from Large Language Models by Sridhar Mahadevan.
Yeah, this one introduces a system called Democritus. And honestly, it feels like a major shift in how we might think about doing causal inference, but at a massive scale.
Okay, so let's do the 1 minute rundown for everyone. What is the absolute core mission here?
Well, the goal is to build these huge structured causal maps. They call them large causal models, or LCMs. And the key is that they span all these different fields, not just one narrow area.
And they do this by tapping into what's already inside a large language model?
Exactly. They harness the latent knowledge inside something like the Quen model they used. So Democritus is the system that extracts and organizes all of that.
So it's not just a prompt, it's a whole system.
Right. Democritus gets the LLM to generate millions of tiny causal fragments, like smoking causes cancer. But the real magic, the innovation, is how it then uses this thing called a geometric transformer.
Ah, the machine learning core.
Yep. It takes that complete mess of fragments and weaves them into a coherent, geometrically structured map, a hypothesis manifold.
So the bottom line is you don't just get a paragraph of text, you get a reusable, navigable map of complex causal stories that you can actually visualize and think with. It's structure from text.
That's the perfect summary. It's a whole new way of organizing knowledge.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit more. The paper opens with this great quote from Democritus himself. "I would rather discover one true cause than gain the kingdom of Persia."
I love that they use that. It really grounds the work in this foundational pursuit of knowledge.
It does. But for us, for the AI researchers and engineers listening, what does this paper really signal about where causal discovery is heading?
I think it signals a big pivot from, let's say, rigor at depth to rigor at breadth. For decades, the giants of this field, Judea Pearl, Donald Rubin, they were all about constructing causal knowledge with extreme confidence.
Which you get from controlled, specialized studies with clean numerical data.
Precisely. And that work is absolutely critical for scientific validity.
Yeah.
But it's also, by its very nature, narrow. You can't run a randomized control trial on the entire global economy's interaction with climate change. It's just impossible at that scale.
And that's the gap where the LLMs come in, acting as this massive knowledge extractor.
Exactly. Democritus just flips the script entirely. It's designed to build these LCMs that span hundreds of interconnected domains, millions of causal claims. And it gets that breadth by combining the LLM's encyclopedic knowledge with these really advanced deep learning methods. It's built for synthesis.
I think everyone listening can probably guess the challenge, though. If you just ask an LLM, hey, what causes inflation? You get what the paper calls a laundry list of disconnected fragments.
Yes. It's rich information, but it's totally unstructured. It's basically data just waiting for a schema.
And that's the gap Democritus is built to fill, right?
That's the whole point. It takes these isolated, maybe even contradictory claims, and it forces them into a coherent geometric structure. The key theoretical idea they lean on is something called Topos Causal Models, or TCMs.
Okay, Topos Causal Models is a term that's probably going to make a few ears perk up. Can you ground that for us in simple terms?
Sure. Think of Topos theory as this really powerful, universal math framework. It's a way to talk about systems and relationships across totally different domains, but using a single unified language.
So the LCMs are like pieces of that larger system.
They're slices of a TCM, exactly. And this framework is what gives them the theoretical basis for a sort of MapReduce approach to discovering causality. Instead of finding one perfect causal link, you get strength by combining millions of plausible statements and seeing what structures emerge. It's consensus.
So high level, it starts with an LLM just acting as a discovery engine, generating this sea of statements.
Right? A brute force approach. And then that huge relational grass gets fed into this special geometric transformer layer. And that, as we'll see, is really the linchpin of the whole system. It's what creates the organized manifold of embeddings.
And that manifold, the map, is what gets stored as a topo slice. It makes the knowledge persistent and queryable. It's a very clever way to tame the fire hose of information from these models.
Let's pop the hood then. This is so important for anyone thinking of building something similar. The final graph isn't the result of one magic prompt. It's a pretty complex 6-module pipeline.
Yeah, it's highly sequential, which is smart. It starts with module 1, the topic graph. You give it some root topics like macroeconomics or neuroscience.
And then it just expands.
It does an LLM-driven breadth-first search. So it asks the LLM to list subtopics and then subtopics and so on. In some of their big runs, this went 5 layers deep. The output is basically a big JSON file that maps out the whole conceptual space.
So once that taxonomy is built in Module 1, it has to start filling in the actual relationships. That brings us to Modules 2 and 3. Right, and Modules 2 and 3 are where the money gets spent. This is the core LLM consumption part. For every single topic from Module 1, the LLM is prompted to generate causal questions, like what causes X, and then short, direct statements, X leads to Y.
This is where it's turning implicit knowledge into millions of explicit claims.
Yes, and then that raw text gets cleaned up in Module 4, relational triples.
The classic subject-relation-object format.
You got it. This is where the natural language gets formalized into a directed multi-relational graph. The nodes are concepts, and the edges are things like causes, increases, reduces, and so on.
Okay, so now we have this giant chaotic graph, and that takes us to the real heavy lifting. Module 5, the relational manifold, and the geometric transformer, or GT. How does it turn that hairball into something useful?
Well, the raw graph from Module 4 is like a library with no Dewey Decimal System. All the books are there, but they're just in a giant pile. The GT is the librarian that organizes everything.
I like that analogy. So what's it doing, technically?
Technically, it embeds the graph. It starts with standard LLM embeddings for each concept, but then it does this clever message passing. Not just along single edges A to B, but across higher-order motifs.
They emphasize triangles, right? The two simplices.
Exactly. And the triangle is so important because it captures transitivity. If A causes B and B causes C, then there's a relationship between A and C. The GT aggregates information across these closed loops.
So it's learning from the neighborhood structure, not just direct links.
That's the key. This higher-order message passing refines the embeddings, pulling related concepts closer together in geometric space, and then you apply UMP to that refined space, and that's how you get the clean 2D visual map.
Which brings us to the last step, Module 6, topo slice and unification. This sounds like just saving the file.
It's way more than that. It saves the domain slice, sure, the econ model, the biology model, but more importantly, it's the gateway to unification. The whole framework is designed so you can eventually merge or query across different slices.
What would that even look like in practice, merging two slices?
Imagine you have a detailed slice on climate hydrology and another on agricultural policy. You could unify them to ask, how do specific monsoon patterns from slice A affect food security outcomes in slice B? The math, like the judo calculus they mentioned, lets these two different geometric spaces talk to each other.
Wow, okay, that makes the whole topos concept much more concrete. So let's look at a real-world example. The Indus Valley collapse case study is perfect for this.
It's the ultimate test case, isn't it? A 5,000-year-old mystery. You've got climate, trade, governance. There are no controlled experiments you can run.
So they prime the system with a few high-level topics to start.
Right, things like the Holocene monsoon and riverine trade networks. And Democritus built this incredibly complex web. It connected things like tropical Pacific warming, reducing monsoon rainfall, which then stressed agriculture and governance.
And the visualization, the UMAP projection, what did that structure reveal?
It was incredibly telling. The map had these clear, distinct clusters. One for Harappan urbanism, a big one for climate and hydrology factors, another for agriculture, and you could even see the trade links stretching out toward Egypt and Rome. It was all there.
That seems unbelievably useful for a historian or a climate scientist. It's like an idea generator.
It's an augmentation tool. You can take a published study and immediately suggest potential gaps or generate alternative hypotheses. Maybe river revulsion was a bigger factor or regional conflict. It helps you see the whole problem space at once.
But again, this beautiful structure only appears because of that fifth module. The paper makes a huge point about this with their baseline experiment.
Oh, yeah. They show the GT isn't just a nice-to-have. It's completely indispensable. In baseline 1, they take the raw graph and run UMAPeter directly on it.
And the result?
The giant hairball. That's the literal term they use. 35,000 variables in the economics domain. And it's just an unstructured mess. You can't see any patterns at all.
But when you add the GT layer in baseline 2?
It's like flipping a switch. The structure just snaps into sharp relief. The hairball resolves itself into these clear, semantically coherent clusters. It's a night and day difference.
So the big takeaway is that the system learns from the structure of connections, not just the connections themselves. That higher order message passing across triangles is what organizes the noise into a signal.
That's it, exactly. And when you zoom in on those clusters, the local coherence is amazing.
Yeah.
The minimum wage cluster correctly links to employment, spending, and inflation.
And the electricity demand one connected heating, EVs, and industrial use. It's recovering these well-known systems of relationships automatically.
It confirms the GT is finding real causal beliefs that are already latent in the Quinn model and just forcing them into a readable geometry.
So let's have to talk about the practical side of this. We're talking millions of nodes. Where's the computational bottleneck? It has to be the LLM calls, right?
It's not even close. The timing profiles in the paper are stark. A big run took about 16 hours. Over 99.9% of that time was spent on the LLM calls in modules 1 to 3.
And the really complex part, the geometric transformer and UMP.
Less than a minute. The graph processing is negligible. The bottleneck is pure, expensive LLM inference.
Which means the naive breadth-first search they use now is super inefficient for any real-world use.
Totally. It expands every topic equally, so you're burning your budget, exploring things that might be completely irrelevant, like expanding cybersecurity funding to depth 5 when you only care about agriculture.
So the future has to be an active explorer model.
It's the only way to make this scalable. The idea is to use feedback from the graph itself, like node centrality from the GT embeddings, to decide where to spend the money. They propose a utility score, WNEC, for each topic on the frontier.
And you spend your budget on the highest utility topics.
Exactly. You do deep, selective Q&A on the most promising or central nodes instead of just blindly expanding everything.
Okay, before we get to the really exciting future stuff, we have to put some big warning labels on this. What are the key limitations our technical listeners need to know about?
Number one, and this is critical, this is a hypothesis generation engine only. The LCMs are narrative maps. They are not validated against numerical data. They give you candidates to test, not ground truth.
And with that, no statistical guarantees.
None. This isn't about causal identifiability in the strict Pearl-style sense. It gives you candidate mechanisms, but the burden of statistical proof is still on the researcher.
And of course, the elephant in the room. It's all based on an LLM.
Right. The entire structure is just a reflection of the causal beliefs and, frankly, the biases that were in the LLM's training data. Hallucinations are possible. This always requires a human expert in the loop. So to kind of wrap up what this system is, I think the best way to see Democritus is as a causal observatory. It aggregates and geometrically organizes all these textual claims into a coherent manifold.
Which lets researchers see everything at once, recurring mechanisms, contradictions, gaps.
Exactly. And the geometry itself acts as a filter. The scale-free hub-and-spoke structure means weird, idiosyncratic claims get pushed to the periphery, while the central, well-supported ideas emerge as the hubs. It's a form of noise reduction.
The whole thing is already a massive step forward, but the future direction they propose, moving beyond these static maps to dynamical causal models Democritus owed, that's a whole other level.
It really is. I mean, think about that Indus Valley model again. That wasn't just arrows on a diagram. Real climate science involves differential equations.
And they're proposing using LLMs to suggest those equations.
That's the vision. Using an LLM not just for X causes Y, but to suggest candidate differential equations, the coupling terms between them, the boundary conditions. Essentially, using the LLM's narrative knowledge to bootstrap a mechanistic simulator.
So you go from a structured map to a structured simulation front end. That is a genuinely groundbreaking idea for modeling complex systems.
It bridges the qualitative world of text and narrative with the quantitative world of numerical solvers, which has always been a painstaking manual process.
It really leaves us with a provocative question then for everyone listening. How could you link these LLM-derived causal maps to your own observational data? Could that unlock the next generation of causal inference? This is definitely one to watch.